This is Infection, the survival podcast, pre-recorded for Tuesday, July 11th, 2017, episode 130. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Infection, the survival podcast. Infection is your source for the latest information on survival video games. We're bringing you the latest news, reviews, updates, and more each and every week. My name is Nick Craig. At Nicholas M. Craig is my Twitter. InfectionPodcast.com is our website. And Brian, we are pre-recording an episode of this show. This doesn't happen very often.
No.
What's going on?
Well, we did it, a week ago, but that was only for the first half of the show. So this will be one of the first.
And this is like very pre-recorded, like a day after we did the show already. So this is very pre-recorded, but it's fine because we never miss a week here. Consistency is key. What's going on, Brian? How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. If you want to find me at Boise Computer on Twitter, or you're more than welcome to go check out my blog, biteoftech.com. I would also encourage you to join our Discord group. Nick and I may not be there this week, but there's a lot of people to play games with still. So if you go to infectionpodcast.com, on the right-hand side, you can click Join Server. That will connect you to our Discord group. Usually there's 60, 70 plus people in there, and plenty of people playing games all throughout the week. So I would encourage you to go. If you haven't joined it already, click Join Server. It'll get you right onto there. And you only need to do that once. Once you do that, if you have the app installed either on your phone or you have it installed on your computer, every time you open it up, you'll be connected to the Infection Discord server. So it's really nice, easy app to use. When you're not wanting to be on it, you just close it or exit it out, and it doesn't run or do anything in the background after that. So also make sure you join our Steam group for notifications of when we do our games of the week. Also, we do notifications on there of when the live show is about to start. And so that's a nice place to be able to find other people that are playing games and find their Steam libraries and their profiles there. And then, of course, we will be having a game of the week. We haven't discussed what it is, but we will put a notification so it shows up. I know that the one that will be by the time we do this airing here will be done. So hopefully people enjoyed Battlegrounds. And
yeah, hopefully enjoyed it 3 days from now.
Yeah, 3 days from now. Hopefully you guys enjoy that. But we'll put a notification up, and it should pop up saying what game of the week, and we'll also put notifications in the Discord group beforehand so people can play.
Yes. We have a very special show lined up for everybody tonight. Brian, I'll let you do the honors. You've been waiting a long time for this one. Go ahead.
Yes. So I'm going to be introducing, and it's Marco. Is it Catena? I want to make sure I
Catena.
It's
Catena.
Catena. There we go. And
Catena,
he is one of the developers of Miscreated. So he's the lead level design. Is that the correct official term?
Yes.
Position.
Yes,
and with Entrada, and that's a game that initially when I started talking about it, people didn't really know what it was. Like, not very many people had played it, and I just kept talking about this game that was just so beautiful. I would go and people would make fun of me because I just would run around and just look at stuff, and I would run around and try to find stuff. Not necessarily things to loot, but like just what's the little thing can I find? What little hidden gem, or like what little thing? And you're the person most likely responsible for all those things I'm running around, because they tease me about being so into immersion. And this game is all about immersion for me. And so I've been a big fan of Miscreated from day one, even through all the rough times when you guys are figuring out your server stuff. Like, it's a beautiful game. You can say whatever about the networking code and all that stuff. The game itself is beautiful. And so, that comes down to you. So thank you very much for coming on here. It's nice to put a voice to a face, because Twitter is just a bunch of pictures usually. So,
yeah. As this isn't a bunch of pictures just moving really quickly in succession, Brian. Appreciate that.
Thanks. So one thing you can do if you want to check out some information about him, it's about marcocatena.com is his website. If you want to go see what his educational background, what he does, what his skills are, because he's not just some guy on the internet who likes to mess around with stuff. He went to college and has a degree in this, very talented in his area. Also, you can check out his Twitter, twitter.com/miscreatedmarco. And he put posts on there. And if you're ever looking for like high resolution screenshots from the game, just cool things. We were talking to him before. He's the one who makes the videos and things that you see. So a lot of the public facing of what Miscreated is that you see comes from Marco. So so that's pretty cool. One thing I did want to ask, you do have a little bit on your about page, but how did you get into this business? Did you go to school saying I want to make video games, or is this something that kind of later, as you're figuring out what you're trying to do, did you get into the industry somehow, or is this something that you planned on doing?
Well, before it started as I used to do mods for Crysis 1 and Crysis 2, and I was using CryEngine back then, which was CryEngine version 2. And yeah, I created a few levels and multiplayer games with the CryEngine for those two games, and that was back in 2007, I think. I was only a teenager at the time, and then I wanted to take it a bit more seriously after college. I thought if I do a degree, it will kind of push me into a career path. I did my degree. It took me 3 years to get it. I got a degree in computer games design, and then I didn't immediately get a job after it. It took me 2 years after to get this job with Entrada. I did work for my local theme park before I did this. Yeah, I was the guy who pushed the buttons on roller coasters, and I did that for about a year, and before that, it was like ride photos. So yeah,
it's a good use of your college degree.
Yeah, good use. I mean, because the problem was with the industry, it was it's quite competitive with the people they want to hire. They always ask for experience, so it's either you must have 3 years experience or 2 years experience. It's like, how do you get the experience without getting the job in the first place? So I mean, after 2 years working in, quite frankly, a crummy job, I just thought to myself, I just need to pursue this path again and try it. And so, yeah, I did, and I succeeded, which was lucky.
Now, Marco, we're here to talk about Miscreated, but I am curious about this. We have a lot of people that watch this show that are either in late high school, maybe they're into college now, or they're looking to go into college. If somebody is interested in game design, in your opinion, or game development, do they need to go and get a degree for that, or is it something that enough time modding Arma, whatever engine or game you want, is enough of that to get a job in game development, or do you think you have to get a degree?
I think if you want to do something very specific like programming, especially you want to get a computer science degree or a computer games programming degree, I think that's necessary. But honestly, there's so many different sources out on the internet now, and there's Unreal's engines for free, CryEngine's for free, Unity's free. You can download these packages, and then there's like almost unlimited amounts of tutorials and communities that you can join and you can learn by yourself. It's, as long as you're passionate enough, I think you can make it without going to school for this kind of job. But you have to be very, very
good. What
good,
position did you start out with when you got hired on for Miscreated? Did you start as lead designer, or did you start somewhere else and then later become that?
Well, when I started, the company really was just a startup company. We were just a bunch of guys on the CryEngine forums, and I had just finished my job. The season just ended at the theme park, so I finished my job, and I was like looking for a place to get some experience. So I went on to CryEngine.com, went on their forums, because I'm used to their technology, because I'm very good at it, and I've used it before. So I went on their forums. They have a recruitment like sub post place anyway, so there's a thread in there, and there was one for Miscreated, and this was my boss now, Terry Evans, who started the post, and he was looking for a level designer because they didn't have one. But I mean, early on, the company didn't have any money. It wasn't until we put the game into early access, which was October 2014, I believe, that we started getting revenue, so we can start actually this becoming our job. Most of the people on our team, were there from the beginning, and they were all volunteers, and it's quite crazy knowing the backgrounds of some of these people, what their jobs were before. It wasn't necessarily just computer games. This was just purely their hobby. I mean, I mean, Graham, like one of our the guy who does most of our buildings in the game, he used to be a builder, like labor making, you know, it's kind of crazy. He used to be a builder, so he has an eye for buildings, and now he creates them in 3D, and that's his job. So, you know, we've all come from many different
So
backgrounds.
what time,
There are
like,
a few, yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
so yeah, so how you're kind of giving some dates. So how long, when did you start? So how long have you been working for Entrada, or when, not necessarily working, but when did you join them? And then when did they consider you like, no, now you're getting
Yeah.
paid?
Yeah, I started in February 2014, and obviously, yeah, I was working for free then. I shot Terry a message on like an email, and he gave me a week trial to kind of come up with something, and I showed him all my work, and you know, I got accepted. And then it wasn't until October of that year that I actually properly got a paid contract, and now it's really my job. It's my full-time job now to work on this game, and everyone on the team works from home just like I do.
Do you think that's kind of the future of game design from here on out? I mean, just being able to, with the new technology of being able to do all these things remotely, submit your code or submit your graphics. Do they really need to have the offices like you in for other studios?
I mean, even big studios, say like Ubisoft, they have studios all around the world, just as much as, you know, we do too, in a way, but we're all individual. But I think for like an indie sort of setup, I think it works perfectly. There's no overhead costs. You don't have to really worry about relocating or finding talent in your area. Your talent is global. Your talent pool is global, so you can find anyone anywhere. So in a way, I do believe it's the future, but I much prefer an office, I would say.
So that's exactly what I was going to ask. Is, you know, the job I'm moving for in the next couple of weeks here, I currently do remotely right now, and while that's great, you can sit at home, you don't have to sit in traffic to get to the office. There are, and I think people should know this, working from home it's great. There's many good aspects of it, but it's not all great. I mean, there are things that it's easier to just do in person when you can walk over to the next desk and say, hey, where is this? Hey, where is that? You know, what's your update on this? Is that something that you have a problem with, working remotely?
Oh, I would say it's a problem with time zones. I mean, if I need to speak with someone in Australia, then, you know, he's up when I go to bed, and it's the same with a couple of people in America. You know, if I want to speak to them, we have to wait until later on in the evening. I mean, even now, it's like it's 10 o'clock at night here, and it's probably the afternoon for you guys. It's you know,
I mean,
time
it's
zones
like,
are
2:15.
Yeah.
In the
I mean, time
afternoon,
zones are a
so.
bit of a pain, but the another thing is, it's like your work's at home. It's like, imagine going to work in an office and then sleeping under your desk. It's, in a way, it feels like that, but you got a bit more freedom and flexibility. That's all the benefits. But I'd love to just shut the door sometimes and get my head out of it and relax.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I know a lot of people promote this. Oh, I love working from home. I love working from home. It's not. It's all it's cracked out to be. Absolutely not. I mean, there is that benefit of when you leave the office, you are done, and when you work from home, it's emails or whatever, 24 hours a day. You know, you get something, you have to answer it. So it's interesting.
So now there's an upcoming title, a new title that's they've talked about that Entrada is going to be a part of. Do you have anything to do with that title? Are you allowed to say, or are you sticking purely with Miscreated?
I'm purely on Miscreated. I'm on that project through to the end, and I mean, the new project that that Entrada is working on as well, in conjunction, is Rebel Horizons, which is more of a space MMO. I don't really know a huge deal about it, but the technology is completely different from what we did from this game. It's using Unreal technology, and it's also using, I think, what the hell is it called? It's made by Improbable. It's this company in London. It's called Spiritual OS. I hope I pronounced that right. I think it's spiritual or spatial OS, which is instead of like
Spatial OS, right?
spatial. There
Spatial
you go.
OS.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of it being that you connect to one server and that's your game on that one server, you connect to like a cluster of servers. So when you're moving through the game, you connect to various different servers. So it's an interesting piece of tech. Um, so I don't really know much about it, but I'm not touching that game at the moment. But
I
the
haven't.
good thing about it, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say I haven't really seen any games that have. I mean, I've seen games saying they're going to use it, but I haven't really seen any games using it currently, like with it in effect. So
It's
it'd be interesting to see how it really works, since everybody is saying, "Oh, we're going to use this."
it's
Not out there yet.
it's very new technology. It's very early stage technology, very new. I think there's one other game that's out that uses it. I think it's called Worlds Adrift, which I don't know if
And
you've
they
heard of
just
it.
released. Yeah.
Yeah, they just
So they
I
released
believe they
like a
just
month,
released.
and a half ago, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yes.
And I'm not sure. The game, from what I've seen of watching people play it, it doesn't seem huge, but I guess probably you can go other places and see people. It's not like all these people are running around and there's, just tons of people that you know about. But I think it's to where you can get up, make a ship, and then travel to pretty much where other people are, and that's where it's probably transferring, and everybody can communicate on their
Yeah.
servers somehow at some point if they traveled over there, which I think
Yeah.
is, if you're not running a lot of people at once, that probably works fine. It'll be interesting to see if you get 100 people in the same place and then you try to do this, what happens.
Yeah, I'm quite curious about it as well. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I mean, our company's hired like a completely separate sub team for this, and they're all working part time or full time. I don't know the exact details. I do talk to them now and then because we have like a company chat on Discord, so I try to
Now,
poke some
you
details
did
out of them.
on your about, you said that you have some experience with Unreal. So, I mean, with CryEngine, you
Yeah,
started with CryEngine. What is your
I find
opinion? You work with both. Like, do you have? I know you probably say like, "Oh, I like this one because it's the one that it's my baby from the beginning, what I'm used to." But what's your comparison between the two?
it's funny that you dug up that website. It's quite it's quite out of date, as you can see from the photo of me in it. But I used Unreal 3 when I was in university, so we used that as part of our curriculum. And I mean, back then, this was before Unreal 4 that you have today. I mean, back then it wasn't very. I wouldn't say it's very intuitive compared to CryEngine at the time, which is probably why Entrada picked CryEngine over Unreal, because when they were first trying to pick their technology, their engine that they wanted to work with, Unreal 3 wasn't at that level yet. But now that Unreal 4's come out, and I mean, we always look at Unreal 4 and see how beautiful and all the new tech that comes out with it and stuff. So, but I mean, everyone thinks that the grass is greener on the other side, and maybe it is, but most of the time it's not.
Okay, so going down this road
Oh.
a little bit, what about Lumberyard? Because Lumberyard really is CryEngine's, a certain version of CryEngine that was forked, right?
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
it's being developed by Amazon. So from what I'm thinking, Miscreated is probably at the moment, is it closer to Lumberyard's version than it is now to the latest CryEngine, or have you been able to keep up with CryEngine?
Well, I mean, I would say that the version of the engine that we're using is very similar to Lumberyard right now. I mean, all they've done is tweaked a few things in Lumberyard. I mean, we have discussed, we've been looking at Lumberyard very closely and seeing their updates and seeing what they're doing. But the only hitch with it is that if you're a multiplayer game, you have to use AWS, which is Amazon servers, and there is no wiggle room there. You can't use your own servers unless you own a server company, which we don't. So if we wanted to, let's say we wanted to let players host their own servers, they couldn't, because we'd be locked down in AWS because we're using Lumberyard. So it's really a no go for us at the moment. And we have such a really good standing relationship with Crytek, who make CryEngine, and they invite us to their trade shows to show off the game. They always want videos for our game for their promotions as well, and we're always back and forth with their technology team as well. So if we have like a problem with the engine, we can just shoot them an email, or we know specific people in that company that know the ins and outs, and they you know, we try to stay loyal to them. And going with Lumberyard, we just kind of burn that bridge, I would say. And there's also some
that's got to be tough
problems.
Because if you look at some of the things that Lumberyard's doing, I mean, they're kind of fixing some of the things that you're also fixing in CryEngine with the networking code. Like, they're really focusing on all the things that you guys are putting the exact same resources into to try to fix. You think CryEngine is possibly looking at this and saying, oh, maybe we should ramp up our multiplayer network code so that these small dev teams like yours doesn't have to go and do it all by hand, which is a huge amount of work. I mean, it's not some simple thing to do. I mean, is there a point where they'll ignore it long enough and then be like, or do you guys submit code that you do back to them to say, hey, this would be really good if you put this into your engine so we don't have to keep all this side, code?
It's like you're a fly on the wall, really, from what you just said there. I mean, we have, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, to be honest, but
it's fine.
I mean,
you can
we
say
have,
sorry. It's fine. Nobody's watching. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You can say anything you want.
Whenever a developer says, I don't know if I can say this, we say, just don't worry. No, it's just the three of us, right?
Yeah.
There's no one else here.
It's a private conversation.
I mean, obviously, we work closely with Crytek, like I just said, and I mean, picking out all the CryEngine, the games that are out there, not that many, but there is some, and we being one of the bigger multiplayer ones that has to deal with hundreds and thousands of items and players and database and all the back end stuff, and we kind of share our findings with them, and yeah, it's just a part of our deal with them.
Well, cool.
I'm not going to say anymore because
that's no problem. And that's the thing,
because I don't know the inner workings of but anyway, we have a good relationship with Crytek. That's all I'm going to say now.
Yeah, and that's the thing I look at. I mean, because I'm from an outside observer, and I understand that there's a relationship there. And I look at Lumberyard, and I'm like, man, that would fit so well. But there are the limitations of, Amazon has a reason that they're doing this. They have a reason they bought it, and it's free. Yeah. They want people to use their services. They want them to use all those back end services, and you get locked into that environment. Once you go to Lumberyard, one crazy thing that I was looking at here this last week is SpeedTree is free for Lumberyard. So any developer who uses Lumberyard gets SpeedTree for free, which, I mean, it's definitely smart on Amazon's part. Like, they're making it so easy. They're like, oh, you don't have to worry about the servers. You don't have to worry about some of these licensing costs. I mean, you can tell they're definitely doing everything they can to bring these people over, but at that cost. You will be using their service. Those things don't transfer out. If you can't take those trees that you make in SpeedTree and move them over to a project if it moves. So, that's one thing to keep in mind for people that are maybe in that step. There are drawbacks.
Now, Marco, you said something interesting at the beginning when Brian asked you if you're going to be working on this new space game. You said, I'm with Miscreated until the end. For you, what is...
Not announcing the end, right?
What? No, not announcing the end, but what is the end? We see this problem. We talk about early access games every single week, and it seems like a lot of these games, Ark has kind of been the gold exception to this. They never finish. It's always just this, like DayZ's a great example of it. I love the DayZ team. I love the game, but they're just always... They're never getting anywhere. It's been like 2 years, and it's just still the slow pick away at the game. Do you think, I think you do, but do you think Miscreated has an end? And if so, what is that end for you and your team?
This is quite a hard question, but I would say we have an end in sight. I can't say specific estimates. We have like an internal estimate of what we want in the game, to say, yes, we can pull out and move into beta and then polish and fix and then move into release and get out of early access. We have a date in mind I'm not allowed to say because I'll get killed. But I
It's the
mean,
internet. Don't move around.
what we want as the end is what we promised from the start, and then beyond, it's never the end though, because beyond that, obviously we want to continue supporting it as long as people keep enjoying it, and there's so many different things that I would like to see in the life after Miscreated, if that makes sense. So once it's released, I would love to see, I would love to see mod support, because that's how I broke into this industry in the beginning. Like we discussed earlier, I would love to give something back and let someone have the tools to this and see what they do with it, because sometimes they'll surprise you really. But yeah, I mean, we have an end in sight. We have a big list of things that we need to go through. Whether we'll hit our date that we're thinking, it remains to be seen. But I feel very confident in it.
So do you have any kind of things, we're not asking for secrets that you're not allowed to tell, but do you have anything that's going to be coming up that maybe people haven't heard about yet? Things because you've done the sewers, you've got, this big city that you put out a while ago. I mean, the game is still growing. Like, there's new things coming. Is there anything that's kind of on the horizon that's going to be something that, hey, they'll be like, hey, check out the screenshot of this? That you're allowed to talk
about? I mean, I've pretty much talked about quite a few things that are up and coming from my side, anyway, for the the map design and new locations to visit. I mean, I'm currently working on a newer town in the north end of the map. Yeah, north corner. We're still improving the big dam that we released in the last update. We got some new bits and bobs that need to go onto there. I'm waiting for some new. I'm actually waiting for some new buildings that Graham, one of our builders, is pumping out for me. Some new residential buildings to kind of vary up the towns a bit more. And then our part-time level designer is also working on the harbour area north of Hayward City. So the big city, there's a big harbour at the top of it, and he's kind of fleshing that out and nailing that out. Yeah, I think then there's long awaited. There was like a leaked icons of like a few scopes and things, and we're kind of polishing that up now and trying to get that in for the next update. Hopefully, I don't know yet, but it seems promising. I've seen them working in game, so more scopes for more weapons.
Now this is I'm curious about this, since you seem like you have a lot. Do you have a lot of creative control, like in your current role?
I have pretty much infinite freedom to do what I want with my portion of the game anyway. So with the map or anything. So if I wanted to put something in there, or I could just hide it and sneak it in, I can do that. As long as it doesn't break anything and it makes sense, then no one's gonna argue with me. But
so I'm curious about this. Now, I would imagine you enjoy playing video games on the side. This is probably a hobby of yours. Do you have this issue of, and I've always wondered about this issue of, oh, I like playing video games. Oh, that's cool. I like X feature in this game. Let me just put that in my game. Is that something that you have to, I would imagine it's something you have to constantly deal with, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Because you see, like, especially games that are similar in the genre, you see it and you're like, damn, how did they do this? This is really fun to play around with. I usually just look at the little things more than the big features. So like art pieces, like assets and buildings and landscapes and things, rather than core game mechanics. Because I don't really touch any game code or any mechanics or anything. I'm just purely just visuals and level design and just the map. So usually I look at assets and location ideas and things. Yeah.
So how many asset designers, because there's so many unique graphics in this. I mean, if you look through the screenshots of Miscreated, and that's one thing that really caught my eye right away, it just seems like there was just a huge amount of detail. And, You just the from the graffiti to you just look around. I mean, you look at one scene around that church area and you see telephone pole that's broken down, and just it's not bare. You go to a lot of games that are open world and there's just tons of dead area. There's tons of repeat. And that's one thing I really noticed with this. I mean, I'm sure there's repeat, but it's done in a way that it doesn't seem to be super noticeable. So like, how many do you have? A lot of people, is a larger part of your team creating assets, or do you have just a couple asset people that are just really good?
I would say like the largest division in our team is probably artists.
Yeah.
And then this is really my job to just kind of piece it together. I think off the top of my head, I think there's probably about I think there's about 5 or 6 artists, I believe. But some of them don't just do environment art. I mean, Matt, it does most of our character art, so clothing, the characters themselves, the mutants, and all that. I mean, Carl usually does small props and guns and little things, and then we have some generalist artists as well. But I mean, mainly for like environment, is just me. There's a part-time level designer, and then there's Graham, and then there's also Sirkin, who's another artist who jumps on board. He's kind of a generalist, and yeah, I mean, there's probably about 4 of us that mainly focus on like the bigger things in the map more than anything, you know.
So do you do any kind of work for other studios as well? Is this something that you pretty much just miscreated, or do you kind of dabble in, not even maybe another studio, but do you do stuff for other people or other projects?
No, this completely eats up all my time. My life is just revolving around this game and this job, really. 'Cause it's just, I mean, my plate is just never ending at the moment. Anyway, it feels like that way because I've been on this project for so long, and I am the only full-time person who level designer puts this together. So, you know, it eats up all my time. Full-time job. It almost feels 24/7. Sometimes I work on weekends and things as well, just to hash out some stuff. Yeah.
Do you ever run around and like, because generally you don't usually see people change things that they've done previously. Do you ever run around the map and you're like, what, like something you did years ago? You're like, why did I put that there? Have you ever tempted, like, do you bother ever going back? Like, I got to go move that. Do you catch your weird thing?
Every time I play the game. Yeah. If I play the game for like about half an hour, I'm just looking at stuff that I know I can make better. I know I can improve this part. I know I can change this part. And all it makes me want to do is just close the game, open up the editor, and just start doing it.
Redo the entire game.
I don't have to sit there. Yeah, it's like I could get into the real thing and move this around.
There are some parts in the level I'm just kind of, I feel like just scrapping and doing from scratch again. Because, you know, when we started the project, there was not many assets for me to play with, and now we've got, I think it's over 5,000 different objects and assets I can place in the world. So in comparison, you know, there was a lot less in the beginning. So now when I go back to older areas, I see them and I'm like, I can just spend a bit of time revamping them. But people want more and more stuff rather than quality at this stage, I would say.
And
some people would.
That's a huge issue with the early access communities. It doesn't matter how polished you make anything. It's, I want more of this, I want more of that. That kind of feeds into my question here. How much of the game have you had to just completely redo? Because you said when you started off, you didn't have the assets available. I would imagine you didn't have the same tools or team members available to do tasks. Have you had to redo a large portion of your job in the past couple of years, I guess in the past year or two, because you have those assets available now?
Yeah, I mean, I go back on some things just to completely change. I mean, like the military base is probably one of the most recent ones. where we're just like, I mean, like Brian says, like why the hell did I do that? You know, and we kind of moved a few things around and made it look a bit nicer. And there are many other areas I know in the back of my mind that I want to change and do. It's just a matter of time. But like you said, yeah, I mean, the early access community is more like, well, I can make this area look a bit more pretty, or I could have a new town or a new location to explore. And I think they would rather have the new location than that. You know?
So without bashing the early access community, because that's what we do, could you, if you, let's say you had the opportunity again, would you have done an early access game if you knew it? I mean, it's no surprise. I can't specifically speak for the Miscreated community, but a lot of these specifically survival early access game communities are unbelievably toxic. Do you notice that with Miscreated?
I don't go to certain places on the internet.
Yeah,
because of that.
Okay, so if you had the opportunity to do it again, would you not do an early access project because of the community?
Not to. I mean, if I was to do it again, I mean, to be honest, the early access program really gave us the funding and the needs to do it in the first place. So, I mean, kind of in a way, we didn't really have much of a choice. I mean, we could have gone through Kickstarter or something else. I mean, that's pretty much similar to early access anyway. So, I mean, early access basically Kickstarter, but you get to play it. So, I mean, if I was to do it again, my frank answer is really we had no choice. We had to do it like this because of our, our background, basically having zero cash or capital.
One thing I have noticed about the Miscreated community is, and one thing that really impressed me is there are some very dedicated players in the Miscreated world. I mean, ones that just, even when the netcode was really having a rough time and you could only have a certain number of players and it was pretty much eating up all your bandwidth to play. There was that core set of people, like I think it's Bam Bam is one of them I'm thinking of, just certain people that sit there and just love Miscreated. And, there were constant Miscreated, just like I was in here talking, I'd come in the podcast when no one was playing Miscreated yet and say, hey, Ben, you got to play the Miscreated. You got to check out Miscreated. These guys on a daily basis that were promoting the game. And so that's one thing I noticed that a lot of other games like H1Z1 you didn't have those core set of people that were sitting there and pretty much the cheerleaders that I did see on Miscreated, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's kind of my worry of getting, I mean, we're kind of growing and growing and growing, which is really nice, but I really miss, like you said, I really miss the family, really. I call them like the Miscreated family. They are kind of, they're so unbelievably dedicated. I can name so many different names, and we always, I always keep in touch with them on Twitter and look at their tweets and see their opinions over probably more popular, streamers and things, because they are like our Miscreated family. They were with us through thick and thin, which is really insane, to be honest. And they're still with us today, still playing the game, still loving it, and they're really enjoying the updates, and it's nuts, really. But yeah, I don't think I ever want to lose like the Miscreated core family. That's what I hold to myself really closely, anyway. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious how the company deals with. So, for example, let's say there's a forum post going around or a Reddit post, and the general consensus is the community wants something to change. How do you internally weigh a couple of people on Reddit complaining about the problem or on a forum? How do you weigh that against, hey, this is our game, we're doing this because we have to or we want to? How do you deal with that? Appeasing the community, but at the same time not giving them, because I think Brian brought it up earlier, H1Z1 has done this where they've given the community too much power and they follow everything the community says, and then they just end up with a mishmash of stuff that doesn't work. How do you guys deal with that with the community?
Well, I think of it as like sometimes you have to just, it's quite hard, this one. I mean, sometimes you don't have to see what they want to change specifically. You want to just see what they're complaining about, or what the problem is in general. I mean, we don't bow down to certain things because some of us are very have it in their way that they want the game to be a certain thing. Some people say like the loot, for example, like, oh, it's too hard to find like a gun on a shelf because it kind of blends in with the environment too much, and we don't want to go down that path where we start highlighting loot like everything's glowing in a house or something and you can just see it and pick it up. We wanted to keep it minimalistic that way, and kind of true to our own game and keep our identity that way. I mean, if we see like a big enough complaint, we'll kind of look into it. But I mean, if it's something that fundamentally changes our core ethos for the game in a way, then we probably would try to slide it under the rug or try a different approach to solve that problem rather than doing what they specifically said. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
How has your process changed over time? Is like you started out as kind of a volunteer group of people, a small group of people. How has it changed from that point to now for like planning? Like, how are we gonna do this? Designing something and then implementing it into Miscreated? Because before, was it just more of a, hey, this would be really cool, let's throw it in there? And then I'm assuming now you're like, oh, that might break everything, so maybe we should hesitate on throwing certain things in.
We've kind of matured. We're a bit more sophisticated now. I mean, so sometimes there is like those odd little fun features that we're like, this would be kind of fun. You only take like a few days to hash out. We'll put that in there. Like the animals, like the pigs and the chickens that you can pick up. And for some reason, I mean, I only saw recently some like new players who find a pig and they pick it up and they're just like jumping in joy. Like, it's so silly and so simple. For some reason, people enjoy that. I mean, now the process is a bit different. We have we use an internal tracking website called Jura and Confluence, and each one is like they're basically like a job tracking system. So you can say, oh, there's a bug with such, and then you can write up a whole report. Or if I need someone to build an asset for me, like a prop or a building, I can write up a whole report on what exactly we need and give them reference photos and things. But yeah, I mean, other than that kind of portion of it, most of the stuff has kind of stayed the same. We don't talk through Skype anymore. We used to use Skype as our main communication. We've shifted over to Discord because Skype's a bit strange sometimes. And we have meetings every few weeks, every couple of weeks, I would say, internal meetings where we just voice chat and we just talk about, what we want to put into the next update and what everybody's working on, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And yeah, I mean, Discord and Jura are our main two kind of organizing pieces, really, how we communicate.
What about one thing that we have heard about, people saying, well, what about the base building system? Because you had initially with, you didn't have the ability to store a lot of items due to the, the replication system was not filtering what data would go where. So then once you were able to say, all right, this is not relevant to this player, so they don't need to have all this data sent to them, and you implemented that relevant system, now you can have storage and things like that. Are you guys planning on making the base building system bigger? Like, are you planning on changing it drastically now that you have some more freedom in the engine?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely on our list. There is some really glaring issues with the base building system right now that we are completely aware of, especially making it more user friendly, I would say, because we recently hired a UI artist who did our main menu in our server browser, and he's also going to be working on our in-game UI. So that gives us an opportunity to kind of reevaluate the crafting system and the way you craft things. So that in turn kind of affects base building. I mean, there's like one glaring issue was floating bases, because you can build up a tower, then delete the walls below, and you'll have like your loot box protected like 10 feet in the air or something. There is like early code that Terry's been working on that actually sends it back down to earth. So, I mean, you really have to just ask Terry on that one. He's kind of the lead force into this kind of area for this mechanic. But I mean, we're still kind of back and forth on where we want to take it. But I truly believe that simplifying it a bit more and making it more accessible and user friendly, and then fixing those issues will probably be the way forward for us.
Do you find that sometimes, like, is there any big issue that you guys find yourself fighting with the engine? I mean, you had the netcode thing, but is there something that CryEngine does that just you guys are like, why does it do it this way? Because I mean, you'll see things in Unreal, for instance, and I can always tell an Unreal game because there's just certain things that Unreal does, right? Unity games, you can see certain things that, okay, that's a Unity game. Are there things that it's like, oh, that's CryEngine because the character moves like this, the character does this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few little things. I don't know if you can probably notice sometimes. There's like, I think the most tiny little thing is like when you're running and the gun goes in front of your camera, you can sometimes see it kind of take away objects that are hidden behind it and make them reappear again. Yeah, I wouldn't say there was much. I don't know, actually. I'm trying to think, what the kind of issues you kind of find from a player's perspective. You mean, like, what could they see? Or
like, from what would you notice? Is there anything you notice, or you guys are like, man, you're trying to make it do it another way, but it's just like, that's the CryEngine. That's the CryEngine way. Because I mean, this was a single player game, right? I mean, as far as CryEngine was based on a single player game, and kind of a set thing, linear, like, as far as what it is.
I would think like their terrain system, like if we want to make a cave, we have to cut a hole in the terrain, and they have a good system. So yeah, you can cut a hole, but they're always on a certain grid. They're just on a grid, so it's always a square. And when you're really far away from that, and you look back at the hole that you made, sometimes it makes it bigger, or sometimes it just looks a mess. So, I mean that they're kind of minor little graphical issues. Nothing else I could really point out that I would think that you kind of expecting it to do one way to do the other. It kind of does what it's told to do most of the time, I would believe.
Now, as far as when I'm going to go a little bit more into your area, when you're designing these buildings or designing a layout, what are you using for reference? Like, are you just using your imagination of, here's what I picture might be in this kind of an environment, here's how I picture it might look? Or is there a lot of research that's going into that, of grabbing, pictures and trying to really, or is it just you go in there and just start playing with things and see what comes together? Like, what's kind of the process to be able to make, because there's a lot of details in these scenes that don't just happen by themselves. There's not some tool where it says, hey, let's make this look cool. Like, you're that tool, right? How's that process go of, okay, I'm starting with a building that's just the frame of it, right? It's just the building itself, to having something that feels immersive when you walk into it.
Okay. Well, mainly for like street layouts and things, and Google Street View is like a good source of things to look at, the way like a town's built up and the infrastructure there. In terms of a building, it's more like we build the outer shell first, and then kind of think about the skeleton inside after, which is probably not a good way of doing it, but for us, it's like we don't have the manpower all the time to spend months and months and months planning a huge floor plan and you know how it's all going to kind of turn out. But I mean, Graham's kind of like our mastermind on buildings, especially interiors and things. I always try to encourage him to do multiple ways of getting in and getting out. But yeah, he's kind of like the mastermind in all the architecture in the game.
But as far as like even coming down to like the trash in the streets and the the way the grass is, like it's really easy for companies either to paint it all just and you'll notice, man, it looks the same. Like I just see the exact same combination of grass everywhere. That takes time to sit there and make it look like it's not the paint tool just going, all right, here's a strip of grass. Like,
yeah,
is that something that over time, just with experience, or is that something that like you are sitting there thinking, man, I got to make this flow?
We look at a lot of different references from different games and movies and TV shows. I mean, I have an art book from The Last of Us. I look at like some of their ways of, showing decay with foliage as well. I mean, The Walking Dead, the movies like The Road. We always have like an eye, we always have an eye for detail and see like, well, and you have to kind of imagine if it makes sense. You can't just put a tree in the middle of the street and you'll have to say, well, maybe like there's some water pipes broken and like there's a crack in the road and this is where it's come out from. So from that you kind of, and then what else kind of surrounds that area. And then it's sometimes especially for buildings, when I'm detailing a building or I'm detailing a new interior or a new street or something, I always try to make up like a little story for it. It's like, who was here before, what did they do, and what did they leave behind? And I think if you look really closely in some of our buildings and some locations in the game, you'll kind of paint your own picture of what happened there. And that's really my process of detailing things. It's just what happened there before and how is it left behind.
Do you think that's what a lot of people miss? Because that's one thing that when I look at a game and I look at some things on other games that are just, they seem so thrown together. And I'm just looking at them and like, don't you guys realize that this is a history? Like you're seeing the after effects of some event supposedly at this point. And the point of that scene is to tell what happened to get you to the here, right? And it seems like they totally lose the vision of, okay, the reason that something is placed here is because some event happened to get it there. I mean, if a plane crashed, if anything is set there, if there's a mark on the wall, it's not just you don't just throw a mark on the wall. There's a series of events that made that happen. And it seems like that's one thing that always drives me crazy is it seems like a lot of people that do level design for these large companies, like there's not any forethought or afterthought of what made this happen. Like, because that's how when I look at things, I'm always thinking like, what's the events that led to this? And I fill in the blanks. So, I mean, because I'll go off on the podcast. Nick knows this.
No, never.
For, I'll just be like, well, why, they can have this be the end result, but like, what about all these things? And I'll just come up with a full scenario. Like this could be what made this happen, but no, they don't, that's not why they did it. They just said, because, it'd be cool to put this here. And it just, I think that's a really important thing that they seem to miss that the people like me look at. It's like, I want to know why that happened.
I think some of us are, some of the stuff I put in there are kind of like in your face and it's pretty obvious. Like there's a town called Clyde Hill and there's a garage, and outside on the garage it's got it says I think it says something like sorry about your couch, and then you go into the house and there's like blood all over the couch, like something small like that. There's a history there of that house, like what, and then you're as a player you're kind of like, oh god, like what, I got to fill in these blanks. But we kind of give you like tidbits of, I would say it's kind of our way of making story out of some of the locations that you visit. It's just through purely environmental and how the way everything's kind of placed in there.
Do you think that's kind of the downside of these ones that are trying to make something so big, so fast that, I mean, you could take H1Z1's houses on their first map, for instance. And if you look, like the back door goes into the bathroom, and that's connected to the kitchen. And, you know, it's just like the layouts, everything doesn't make sense. The reason that things are placed places didn't make any sense. And it's because they're just, we just need to get it populated. We just need to get stuff here. We just need to get it laid out. We need to get everything placed so that when people run around, like, it feels like there's stuff here, versus that other mindset of, well, we need to tell the story of, and that's one thing they didn't ever do. Well, why is there a zombie outbreak? Like, what led to this? Like, what are all these things? What happened to this building? Why is this door broken down? Little things like that were never answered. And I think it's because it was never, they didn't even try.
I think it just makes it, you know, I mean, thinking about this kind of makes it feel more real to the person who's picking up and playing it, you know. Other than what, you know, what you said about H1Z1, they just kind of splashed it together. And I mean, it's obvious they need to get, they're probably more focused on, you know, getting people to play it and test it and try it and then figuring out their mechanics. But my job is really just to try and put as much detail and story into this as I can and make it, you know, fun to explore, fun to go see. You know, if you go to a town and you kind of seeing a copy paste of something, it gets boring very quickly. And this game's kind of majority of stuff you're doing is going into buildings and looting and looking around and exploring. So, you know, why not make that fun? Why not make that interesting? Why not make that varied? That's what I try to pride ourselves in.
And that's one thing we actually had. I was talking with Gary Newman one time on Twitter, and he was talking about, and I asked him, I was like, well, what are the most important positions in, you know, on the team? And he said, never hire a level designer. And I just thought that was really odd because it goes totally in the face. He's like, that's a one-time thing and you'll never do it. You know, you'll do it once and then. And I was just like, but like for me, the level design, he was just like, yeah, level designers are there. You don't need any on your team. And I was just like, for me, that's like one of the most important roles is the level designer. Like that's what tells the whole picture. I think, you know, maybe if you look at Rust, it's a very different game. And, you know, you can see level design is not necessarily what they're going for. You know, they have them, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. Like for him, for that type of a game, level design is nothing. But I think for Miscreated, it's a huge part. I think the reason that Miscreated has made it this far is because of your level design.
Thank you. I mean, like Rust, like a completely very different game. I believe their maps are procedural as well. They're not. You know, we kind of place every single piece of grass almost in our map, and Rust is just procedurally generated. Computer generates that. So, I mean,
yeah.
To his point, he doesn't need one. He doesn't need me. But I mean, ours is all completely handcrafted. So, and then that's kind of what makes it what it is because there's someone who goes over it and looks at it and, you know, really goes into rather than letting the computer kind of just generate it off the fly. And you put in some numbers and that's it. It's done.
Well, and I think that that's the thing with a game like yours, that is, you're telling that story. Now, how much of the story are you still planning on telling? Because there's one thing that you can tell is the current, like you can tell a little bit of history with the level design. Do you guys have plans for telling the more of the origins of it, kind of telling a bigger history of it through some sort of other discovery other than seeing the world as it is at this moment, you know, what's led up to it?
I mean, we've been kind of discussing this back and forth a little bit. I mean, one obvious idea is just kind of to have like survivor logs and survivor diaries that you can find in the world and that you can read. And this has probably been one of our major discussions in trying to tell the story a bit more. It's something in the world that you can read and look up, and if you want to. Most people probably who play the game, I don't really believe that they would want to just spend their time reading books and diaries in the game, but I would like to put something in there if we could, something like that. There's a bit more black and white than kind of the gray area that we kind of paint the picture with right now.
And how much is that nailed down? I mean, do you guys have some kind of story that you're like, oh, here's what got us here, or is that something that at that time you would have to officially paint a picture of this?
I mean, what we started with was like a couple paragraphs, and that's it. And I mean, I especially have kind of like made my little sub stories in it with just environmental storytelling. But I mean, something to go into more detail about the story, I think we just need to kind of flesh it out a bit more. It isn't really everyone's major focal point, but there are like tidbits that we put in there that is from these few paragraphs that we did have from the beginning. So, I mean, I'd like to just kind of wrap it up and make it nice and make more sense, to be honest. But yeah.
So, I have one more question. I think Nick has one more question. With the new sewer tunnels, is that something that you guys had to really struggle with the engine to be able to implement, or was CryEngine able to handle that just fine since it is under the map? Or did you have to do anything crazy to make that happen?
I had to do a few different things to make that happen, to make it run the way it does run right now. It was quite a technical challenge. One thing was trying to fit it under the city, and we didn't have much room from the terrain, from the street level to you eventually hit ocean. The thing is about CryEngine, about the way we've set up the map, is that ocean runs completely level underneath all the terrain, so you can't go any lower than the ocean, and the city is quite on a low plane that we didn't have a lot of room to put a sewer system in there, so it was specifically designed to fit in that cavity there. I mean, technically we didn't want the city to run any worse than what it does, like frame rate and everything else, and so I had to do something different. We used something called viz areas, which you build boxes around the sewers, which are just kind of like wire shapes, and then you also build like they're called portals, basically windows. So when you look through these shapes, so if you look through the portal or the window, you can see it render whatever it can see through that. And so when you're outside and you can't see through the hole or the entrance, it won't render anything in there. And that was probably the most important thing to do for that, because I think I put, it was probably just over 10,000. I think it's about 10,000 hand-placed objects under there, and that takes a lot of resources to kind of render in one scene. So to cull it and make it hidden from when you're on the street level was very important. Otherwise, it would just run terribly and it would never work. But I think we pulled it off. So, but there were other like glitches and things that we had to iron out as well that were kind of difficult. But yeah,
all right,
there were
Marco,
a lot of technical challenges just for that. So go on.
Let's get into the real question here. The real meat and potatoes of this interview. Let's say I bought Miscreated a couple of weeks after it came out on early access. I played it a little bit and I didn't like it. And I haven't been back since. What would you say to me, the player that played it early on? What would you say to me to win me back to playing Miscreated?
If you played Miscreated a year ago, then playing it today is pretty much a completely different game. For when it came out on early access in 2014, there was only 2 towns and a pistol. Now you have boats, trucks, police cars. We have a major big city, which is probably unlike you've ever seen in any other survival game. I would kind of put that out there. With every huge skyscraper and building that you can go in, and it's fully detailed with thousands of objects and clutter, and I think there's about 30 different weapons now. Yeah, it's completely changed from, especially the video you're rolling right now. This was probably our, yeah, this is our base building trailer, which probably came out in 2015. And the game is completely different from what it was from then. It feels a lot smoother. It feels nicer. There's a lot more things to do. There's, you can hunt deer. It's just a completely big. It's a much bigger game now than it was a year ago.
Awesome. So,
speaking of the city, this is the one. Like, we played The Division, and then you guys released the city map a little bit after that, and we were running through, and I'm like, this has the closest feel. Which, I mean, the Division is a huge studio. I mean, this is a lot of people putting that game together, and I'm just running around that city, and I'm like, this feels very similar to that, like as far as the amount of detail and the depth that you're able to get in there. Especially for the size of studio, but in the genre, I would say one of the best looking cities that I've seen. So it was very nice.
Thank you. I mean, like Graham is a big fan of The Division, and you could probably see that in some of the work. Like you said, you said that it feels like The Division. We're quite big fans of that, and especially Graham, our artist, who did majority of the buildings in the city. Especially like the police station is, you probably noticed that from we took references from The Division for the police station, so it feels very much like that, because we love that art style, we love that, like, that world, and we wanted to kind of incorporate that in there a bit. So they did a good job in that city. So
yeah, no, I was very impressed.
So Marco, somebody's watched this interview. They're interested in Miscreated. They like what they saw. They like what they heard from you. Where can they get more information about the game if they want to check it out?
You can go to miscreatedgame.com, and that will have all our complete update history on there, and links to our Steam store page and forums. You can also go onto our Reddit. I think it's /Miscreated, like r/Miscreated for Reddit. But I would say go to our website, miscreated.com, miscreatedgame.com, and it has all the different social links in there that you can find out a lot of information about the game.
And what about you personally? Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter. It's @miscreatedmarco, and follow me, hit me up a tweet, and I'll try answer it.
Now, Marco, we always have to ask this at the end of every interview. Can you leave us with a secret, a spoiler, a surprise? Can you leave us with some classified piece of information that will break here on our podcast? You have to give us something. It's just a rule of doing an interview. Nobody's watching. Remember, it's fine.
There's nothing I can say, to be honest.
Oh, man. Yeah, we are like 0 for 5 on this. Every time.
You're not the first one who's answered that way.
It's a swing and a miss every time. It's very, very upsetting.
We ask every time. One of them will do it.
Well, being in this industry, you're always under NDA. And I don't want to say, because there was like one time I did a Twitch stream, and I was just showing people how I was doing like a landscape on the side of this mountain. And someone asked me about other weather effects like snow, and I was like, "Oh, we had a snow shader." And I showed him quickly what the whole map looks like covered in snow. And I strictly said to them, I said, "This is never coming to the game. This is never happening, because it's so glitchy and so buggy. We're never going to put it in." And then like next day, Reddit, Twitter was all about, "Oh, snow's coming to Miscreated." It's like, I told you it's not.
They got one screenshot though, and a screenshot showing snow, and that's it.
Yeah, the snow looks good, but I mean, it snows underwater. It doesn't snow on trees.
Perfect, just like real life.
It's buggy, just like real life. Yeah. So we don't use the snow shader. No.
Awesome, Marco. Thank you very much for taking some time. I know it's late over there to do an interview with us. We really appreciate it. Anything else before we wrap it up here?
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on here. It's been great. This is my first real interview for the game. I mean, I've done some written ones, but this is my first kind of vocal one.
I'm
It
sorry.
was really chill. So
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'll get someone else.
an honor to have you on here.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you
been a
very much,
pleasure.
Marco. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon in the future.
Yeah, hopefully. It's been great. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, Brian. Well, there we go. That's your long-awaited interview with Marco from Miscreated. I guess so. We're about an hour in here. Anything else you want to jump into or cover before we wrap it up here for our special both of us being away episode?
No, just make sure we know whatever is going on for Game of the Week.
Yep.
If you're able to participate in that, one thing that is important is that sense of community we have with our podcast. Even if you're like, I'm not a big fan of this game that we're having. It's not necessarily the game we're playing. A lot of it is about hanging out with the people, that are part of the podcast. So I would encourage you, regardless of what game it is, show up to the Friday night game night, come hang out with some people. Sometimes we do board games. Sometimes we play survival games. Sometimes we do whatever else. So it's a fun time though. So I'd encourage you, whatever it is, we'll put a notification that will pop up on Friday at the time. And we'll also have an announcement in Discord saying what the game of the week is going to be. So thank you very much, everybody, for being a part of this. This is our pre-recorded episode, but of course you can listen to it in podcast form. And if you are maybe watching this on YouTube and you're like, oh, you have a podcast, make sure you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com. On the right-hand side, we have links that will take you to whatever kind of form that you'd like to be able to listen to or view us in. We have a link that goes to a general podcast app, or you can listen to us on TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, and or you can even have it where it emails you a notification saying that there's a new episode. So a lot of different features there. We also have our YouTube channel where right after the show is done, we upload a video version of our podcast each week. And so that will be automatically posted here on Tuesday when it's time to go live. And also we will have our podcast version going out at that same time. So make sure you follow us in all those different places. If you'd like to find me on the internet, at Boise Computer on Twitter, you're welcome to check out my blog. It's biteoftech.com. And I will look forward to seeing you guys when I get back in the country. So thank you very much.
Yes, you'll be traveling abroad. Safe travels on your trip, and I hope you enjoy it, Brian.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks. By the way, speaking of that email function, I use that email function to make sure that I've published the show properly. If I don't get an email by the time I'm getting ready to go to bed after the Tuesday show, I'm like, oh, well, obviously I didn't click publish, or it's still a draft or something like that. So it's not spammy, and that works out well if maybe you're subscribed to it, but maybe you forget to listen. If I don't know, or you listen to it on your computer. Yeah, maybe you don't use an app. Maybe you listen on the website or something. It's a nice little it's like a calendar alert. It'll pop up Tuesday night, probably 10 or 11 o'clock Eastern, that the show is published and live, so you can check it out that way. And all that stuff works out really well. And I do want to mention one more quick thing before we get out of here. Our support page, we've been pimping this out the past couple of weeks here. If you head on over to our website, infectionpodcast.com/support, there's a couple different ways that you can help contribute to the show. Now, of course, there's other ways besides this, but these three ways are: we have our Amazon affiliate link for a whole bunch of different countries. You bookmark our Amazon link when you buy stuff on Amazon. It helps us out with that. You can do a direct donation through PayPal, as we did with our PAX East trip last year, which, of course, we always appreciate. And Humble Bundle. This is our new feature that we have here on the support page to help support the show. You click on the Humble Bundle link. It's the same thing. It's similar to the Amazon program. It's an affiliate link, so we'll get some clicks on that if you buy some games or whatever. Now that the summer sale is actually over, there's an advantage of buying things on Humble Bundle. You can support the show, get some good deals on some games, and sign up for the monthly Humble Bundle, which is actually probably out right about now. So head on over to our website, infectionpodcast.com/support. Click on any of those icons, and you'll be ready to go with that. And I did mention there's other ways to contribute to the show. And one of the big ones that I've been pushing recently is giving us news, giving us stories, giving us games you want to talk about. In our Discord channel, which you can get to on infectionpodcast.com, there's a news channel. Inside of that news channel, you can go in there And we're just asking you, if you see a story or an article or a Steam update or a changelog, throw it in that news channel, because so many things are going on throughout the week. Brian and I can check that before the show on Tuesday, read through it, and make sure we got everything that we need to do. So a whole bunch of different ways you can help support the show. And, of course, we always appreciate stuff like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Infection. We will be back live, hopefully, next week. But if not, we're live. We've been live almost every week right here on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Infection Podcast, live every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. After the next couple of weeks, we'll be back, and we'll be in our regular schedule for the foreseeable future. So thanks for hanging in with us, guys. I'm sorry it's a little bit of a shorter show, but I was glad we were able to get that interview with Marco. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for episode 130 of Infection, the Survival Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.